Imagine just for a second trying to build a cutting-edge artificial intelligence using virtual goats from a video game made back in 1999.
Right, which just sounds completely absurd on its face.
Totally. Or, watching an entire nation's railway system suddenly collapse because it's running on cell phone tech from the year 2000.
Yeah, the 2G bottleneck, it is just wild when you actually look at it.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, our mission is to pull apart this really fascinating stack of stories from the June 28, 2026 edition of the Sunday Blender. We are looking at what happens when human systems are pushed to their absolute breaking points and how we engineer our way out of extreme conditions and, well, intense information overload.
And, the defining bottleneck of our era is really highlighted right at the top of the Sunday Blender. The editor provided this fascinating meta note that frames our whole discussion today.
Yeah, about their curation strategy.
Exactly. They recently overhauled how they source the newsletter, completely abandoning x.com as their primary feed for global news.
And the mechanism behind that decision is what really caught my eye. I mean, the editor realized that the algorithm was essentially filtering out the signal and amplifying the noise. It was just creating this rigid echo chamber.
Right, so to break out of that, they shifted their primary sourcing over to WeChat.
Which is interesting because WeChat is a much higher friction platform to navigate for Westerners.
Yes, it is, yeah, but that friction actually acted as a filter. It quietly surfaced these incredibly diverse early signal global stories that were just completely invisible on Western feeds.
Wow. So the medium really does dictate the reality you perceive.
It really does. When a platform's architecture favors noise, the crucial data points are obscured. And that principle, that invisible pressures strain our architecture, that leads perfectly into the physical extremes currently testing the globe.
Right, because Western Europe is trapped under this record-breaking heat wave right now, and the infrastructure is simply not designed to handle it.
No, not at all.
We are seeing temperatures in French towns topping 42 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 108 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you in the U.S. Paris even had to shut down the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre early.
Yeah, and the underlying mechanism here is what meteorologists call a heat dome. It's basically this massive lid of high atmospheric pressure that acts like a compressor.
So it literally pushes the air down.
Exactly. As the air descends, it compresses and heats up, while at the same time suppressing any cloud formation. So it creates this brutal, self-sustaining feedback loop of relentless solar radiation.
And that meteorological feedback loop triggers an economic one. I mean, air conditioning is pretty standard in much of Asia and the Americas, but historically, only about 1 in 5 European homes even has AC.
Right. So when a heat dome settles in like this, you get an instantaneous continent-wide surge in demand.
Which brings in the Chinese manufacturers, right? Companies like Midea, Gree, Hisense.
Spot on. They produce nearly 40% of the global supply. And right now, they are seeing such a bottleneck that basic portable AC units are reselling on the secondary market for way, way over their retail price.
But, securing the hardware doesn't even actually solve the problem because the physical architecture of Europe literally fights back.
Oh yeah, the permitting rules.
Exactly. If you buy a modern AC unit, you have to mount the compressor outside. But these historic European town centers have incredibly rigid heritage and zoning laws. You cannot simply bolt a buzzing plastic box to a 16th century masonry facade.
Right, getting those architectural permits can take weeks, meaning the bureaucratic system is essentially weaponizing aesthetics against basic human survival.
It's bonkers.
Yeah.
But the inability of a system to adapt to extreme heat is even more pronounced when we look at India.
Yeah, temperatures in the north have passed 48 degrees Celsius.
Oh, yeah.
And a recent study just revealed the silent math of this crisis.
And it is grim.
It is. A single day of that extreme heat causes roughly 400 excess deaths. And a 5-day stretch causes nearly 30,000.
30,000 deaths. And the most disturbing part for me is that those 30,000 deaths effectively do not exist in the government data.
Right, because the official data collection mechanism is fundamentally blind to the environmental trigger. When a person succumbs to severe heat stroke, their official death certificate will typically list the proximate biological failure like a heart attack or acute kidney failure.
So the bureaucratic record does not categorize it as a heat-related fatality.
Exactly. And the system cannot effectively deploy resources to fight a crisis it structurally cannot even measure.
Wow. And, it's not just our biological and power grid struggling with modern demands, it's our digital communication networks, too.
Oh, the train collapse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On June 23, 2026, the entirety of Germany's Deutsche Bahn railway network simply froze. Every single train stopped. 5 million daily passengers were stranded across thousands of stations, and all because of a routine component swap during maintenance.
Right. And to understand how a single swapped part paralyzes a national railway,
Yeah.
you have to look at the protocol running the network. It's called GSMR.
Which is an incredibly old standard.
It is. This is essentially a railway-specific version of 2G mobile technology. Literally the same bandwidth capacity you would use to send a text message on a flip phone around the year 2000.
I mean, isn't running one of the world's busiest railways on 2G tech like trying to stream a 4K movie on a flip phone?
That is exactly what it's like.
Why are we pushing these ancient systems to the brink instead of upgrading? The sheer volume of modern data just cannot fit through that tiny pipe. So when they swapped that component, the system couldn't reroute the data packets fast enough.
Right. It created a cascading backlog of information, which triggered an automatic nationwide safety freeze.
Because upgrading a live physical system like that is astronomically expensive, so we just push legacy systems until they snap.
We do. But, if we look at raw computational power, we see a completely different approach to engineering our way out of these bottlenecks.
Right, jumping from 2G to the absolute bleeding edge.
Exactly. Over in Shenzhen, China just brought line shine online, and it took the #1 spot on the TOP 500 supercomputer list.
The processing power of this thing is difficult to even wrap your head around. Lineshine executes 2 quintillion calculations every single second.
It's massive.
Yeah.
It actually outperforms the American El Capitan machine by about 20%.
And the geopolitical reality driving this is what's really fascinating here. Because the U.S. instituted export controls on advanced semiconductors, Chinese engineers could not buy off-the-shelf components.
Right? They were forced to design and fabricate the entire architecture of Lineshine, using strictly their own domestic supply chains.
Which is an incredible engineering feat. But what are they actually using all that power for?
Well, the result is a machine custom-built for the very crises we were just discussing. When scientists model climate change, or try to predict the behavior of a Saharan heat dome, they have to divide the Earth's atmosphere into a 3-dimensional grid.
Okay, so like a bunch of tiny boxes.
Exactly. And the more calculations a machine can do, the smaller those grid squares become, which exponentially increases the resolution of the weather model.
Oh, I see. So Lineshine is running fluid dynamics at a scale that allows us to simulate the hostility of the natural world in high definition.
Spot on.
It strikes me that the venues hosting the 2026 World Cup over in the U.S. are essentially physical manifestations of the environments the Lineshine supercomputer is trying to simulate.
That is a great way to put it. We're taking 11 NFL mega stadiums and imposing perfect atmospheric order on them.
And the scale of that imposition is just staggering. I mean, the final is set for MetLife Stadium in New York, which is a $1.6 billion structure seating over 82,000 people.
And out west, you have SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, which is this absolute marvel of subterranean engineering. It's dug 100 feet into the earth with a translucent canopy overhead.
But to adapt these American football venues to FIFA standards, construction crews had to fundamentally alter the architecture. They were literally ripping out lower bowl seating to widen the pitch by 20 meters, altering sightlines, and managing the indoor microclimate just to keep natural grass alive under artificial light.
Right. And places like Dallas, Houston, and Atlanta have massive kinetic roofs and industrial air conditioning systems capable of keeping 80,000 screaming fans perfectly comfortable.
Completely defying the extreme weather outside. I mean, we are literally engineering our own reality in there.
We are, and that desire to impose order carries over to the structure of the tournament itself. The World Cup expanded to 48 teams this year, right?
Right, which means 16 more teams than usual.
Exactly, dividing them into 12 groups of 4.
And the underlying math of that group stage is incredibly elegant. To figure out how many matches occur in a 4-team group where everyone plays each other once, tournament organizers rely on a classic formula.
The handshake problem.
Yes, exactly. It's n times n minus 1 divided by 2. So you take 4 teams, and the math yields exactly 6 games. It is just this perfect mathematical ecosystem for human competition.
But, moderating that human competition requires highly sophisticated technological oversight. Every referee out there is equipped with a 3-piece communications array.
Oh, the new tech kit, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this.
So they have an earpiece linking them to the video review room, a microphone broadcasting their penalty explanations live to the stadium PA, and a tiny high-definition camera mounted near their ear.
But wait, because a referee is constantly sprinting, wouldn't an ear-mounted camera normally produce unwatchable, chaotic footage?
It would.
Hmm.
So Lenovo actually deployed real-time stabilization software. It essentially crops the edges of the video feed and instantly shifts the frame in the exact opposite direction of the referee's head movement.
Oh, wow. So it artificially stabilizes the image for the live broadcast.
Exactly. It is a massive leap in transparency, wrapping the official in millions of dollars of processing power and hardware.
Which is amazing, but, and I have to laugh at the irony here, despite all that algorithmic smoothing and the live broadcast tech, the ultimate mechanism to actually stop the play relies on an analog whistle.
A human lung pushing air through a tiny plastic chamber.
Exactly. The highest tech still bows to the physical world.
It really does. And the physical performances on the pitch have definitely lived up to the stage. France has looked absolutely ruthless. Ousmane Dembélé, the 2025 Ballon d'Or winner, scored a first-half hat-trick.
And the legacy players are just defying their biological clocks. I mean, Lionel Messi, at 39 years old, now holds the all-time scoring record with 19 goals. And he's the first to score in 7 consecutive World Cup matches.
And Cristiano Ronaldo is 41 and playing in a record 6th tournament. Neymar is even back from that brutal October 2023 knee injury.
But the best part for me, even tiny Cape Verde, an island nation of 500,000 people, managed to advance to the knockout stage on their first try.
It's incredible. And whether it's Cape Verde or Brazil playing, the crowds are reacting the exact same way. The stadium anthems dominating the tournament are completely uniform.
Yeah, you hear Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, We Will Rock You by Queen, David Guetta, and Sia.
Right. And why this matters, the sociological mechanism behind those specific anthems is brilliant. They all rely on massive, wordless, percussive hooks.
Right, you don't need to speak English to belt out the "oh-oh" of the White Stripes.
Exactly. These songs act as universal sonic bridges. They bypass the cognitive load of language translation and physically synchronize the heart rates and breathing of 80,000 global strangers instantly.
Wow. And, bypassing normal rules to find an advantage brings us to the unconventional strategies individuals are using to win. Consider the Dezhou dragon boats in Guangdong, China.
Ah, yes, they call it the F1 on water.
Which is such a great name for it. Dragon boat racing is obviously an ancient tradition, but the topography of Dezhou forces this incredible constraint.
Right. The village canals are barely 3 meters wide, but the boats are 25 meters long.
Which makes no sense. The physics of navigating that are mind-bending. I mean, you cannot conventionally steer a 25-meter boat through a 3-meter right angle.
So how do they do it?
To make the turns, the steersmen execute this synchronized maneuver where they plunge their paddles deep into the water at high speed. This creates a sudden, massive anchor point of drag. Yeah, and the momentum of the hull swings around that pivot point, breaking the surface tension and causing the entire 25-meter boat to literally drift sideways across the water, missing the stone banks by inches.
That is wild. They are weaponizing the physics of their environment.
Exactly. And isn't Ramesh Babu Pragananda doing exactly what the Dezhou boat steerers do?
Oh, the chess grandmaster. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, he's taking a high-stakes environment and artificially restricting the space and time of his opponents to force a mistake, right?
That is a perfect analogy. Pragnananda is a 20-year-old grandmaster from India, and he won the Norway chess tournament despite starting in last place. He defeated the world number 1, Magnus Carlsen, twice in his home country.
And his strategy was just pure psychological pressure, because in classical chess, time is a physical resource on the clock.
Right, so he blitzed through his opening moves with unnatural speed, banking a massive surplus of time early on. He deliberately dragged his opponents into highly complex endgame positions where they had under 5 minutes left to calculate, while he had over 20.
And that ticking clock degrades cognitive function, forcing the best players in the world into catastrophic blunders.
Exactly. He recognized that the constraint of time was a more potent weapon than board position.
That is brilliant.
But sometimes, the constraint is the human body itself, like Dr. Sarah Ruggins.
Oh, this story is incredible. She just shattered the ultra-endurance cycling record, riding from the southern tip of Spain to the northern tip of Norway. That's over 6,000 kilometers in under 14 days.
She beat the previous men's record by 3 days.
The metabolic math of what she accomplished is staggering. She was surviving on 3 hours of sleep and consuming 11,000 calories a day. Processing that much food while under extreme physical duress requires training the human gut as rigorously as the leg muscles.
And the context of her physiological journey makes it even more profound. When she was 15, a rare neurological illness left her completely paralyzed.
Wait, really? Completely paralyzed?
Yes. It took a decade of recovery just to regain normal function, and she only actually took up cycling in 2023. 3 years later, she is setting outright world records to raise funding for World Bicycle Relief.
That is a stunning display of human willpower over biological limits.
It really is.
And as we talk about human cognition and limits, the newsletter pivots to the most absurd yet illuminating story of the week. Adrian de Winter, a scientist at Microsoft, built a functioning neural network using the 1999 strategy video game Age of Empires II.
And he built it out of virtual goats.
I still can't get over this. Out of goats.
Right. And to understand the brilliance of this, you have to look at the architecture of artificial intelligence. Neural networks operate on logic gates, essentially microscopic switches that dictate if this, then that.
And usually, computers use electrical current moving through silicon to flip those switches.
Exactly. But de Winter used the game's map editor to build physical logic gates. He made patches of grass represent a 0 and bridges represent a 1.
And because the game's pathfinding algorithm naturally forces the goats to walk toward the grass, the goats act as the electrical current.
Yes. By routing the goats through a maze of bridges and grass, the game engine processed the logic, and this absurd herd of digital animals successfully solved a simple mathematical task.
That is hilarious, but also kind of mind-blowing.
The so what of the goat AI is actually profound.
Right.
When we interact with modern chatbots, the smooth, natural language they generate tricks our brains into projecting humanity, empathy, and consciousness onto the machine.
We fall for the illusion.
Right. De Winter stripped away the language packaging to reveal the underlying mechanism. The AI is not thinking, it is just executing pathfinding math. It is just goats walking toward grass.
Yeah. That realization that our digital world is just a sophisticated illusion of math leads perfectly into how culture helps us process the shock of automation.
Yeah, the art section.
Right. At the Nebula Awards in Chicago, which are voted on by working authors, the best novel went to The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, which is Native American horror.
And other winners, like Amal El-Motar and Thomas Ha, exist in that blurred space between sci-fi and fantasy, too.
Exactly. These genres prove that human imagination is our best tool for making sense of strange new realities. They aren't about escaping reality. They are the sandbox where we build narratives to metabolize the anxiety of technological change.
And art has always been the counterweight to technological disruption. The Sunday Blender draws this beautiful historical parallel to 1872 with Claude Monet's painting Sunrise.
Right. At first glance, it is just a hazy, unfinished canvas of smudges and squiggles depicting a misty harbor.
But the mechanism behind why Monet painted that way is directly tied to technology. The 1870s saw the rise of commercial photography. Perfect, high-definition replication of reality was suddenly cheap and accessible.
So Monet realized that if a camera could capture rigid data, painting had to capture the raw optical experience of light, the messy cognitive impression of a moment.
Exactly. And when a critic insulted the painting by calling it a mere impression, Monet and his peers embraced the term. They rebelled against the expectation of high-definition clarity.
Fast forward to June 28, 1997, when Radiohead's OK Computer hit #1 in the UK.
Right on the precipice of the internet age.
Exactly. Before smartphones were ubiquitous, they wrote an album entirely about the dread and anxiety of information overload and machines taking over. They deliberately abandoned the easy pop success of their hit Creep to make something stranger and deeper.
So are Monet's Sunrise and Radiohead's OK Computer essentially doing the exact same thing?
I think so. They both rebelled against the high-definition expectations of their eras. They leaned into the abstraction to prove that true human connection isn't about perfect data. It's found in the messy, emotional impression.
They understood that clarity does not equal truth. Sometimes the truth requires the smudge.
What a journey today. I mean, we have traced the cascading failures of extreme heat domes in Europe and 2G train crashes in Germany.
We've looked at the molecular modeling of Chinese supercomputers and billion-dollar U.S. microclimate stadiums.
We've unpacked the math of the World Cup, the physics of drifting dragon boats, the weaponization of the chess clock by a 20-year-old grandmaster, all the way down to logic gates powered by video game goats.
It really is a massive scope. And, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as we wrap up, connecting those last few dots.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Adrian de Winter proves that the empathy we feel for AI is just a trick of smooth language packaging overlaying cold math. And Radiohead warned us 30 years ago about the spiritual cost of surrendering to that exact technological takeover. So as you go about your week and navigate the digital avalanche, ask yourself, when you interact with the algorithm shaping your world today, are you falling in love with the packaging? Or can you still see the goods doing the math?
Wow.
Perhaps the next great breakthrough we need right now isn't a faster supercomputer, but a collective realization of what truly makes us human in an automated world.
I love that. Keep looking past the packaging for you listeners out there. Keep questioning the systems around you and embrace the smudge. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.